Patrice Lumumba, the Congo.
Yep.
Of course, he was struggling for their sovereignty to maintain control, resources, land, and all of the things. And he was knocked out early as a young man. I also use this as an opportunity to talk about King Leopold from Belgium, who supposedly owned the whole Congo. And so that was a time during the rubber trade and the rubber. So they were acquiring rubber from the rubber trees, very horrible work. We lost somewhere between 8 and 10 million people during that whole rubber extraction exploitation process at the hands of King Leopold and his people. And what they would do is they'd say, look, I want you to go out and work. You bring back so much rubber, you don't bring it back, I cut your wife's hand off. So, you know, you have all of these pictures, these people holding the hands of the loved ones who didn't make it. People understand what they're dealing with. In Quavanica, this is another one, fought the Germans, a lot of victories. By the way, they also cut his head off, took it to Germany, put it in a big display and looked at it. And once again, the children are like, okay, what's going on here? Robert Mugabe, you watch the British Broadcasting Corporation, they'll tell you to hate the man. If they tell you to hate him, that means he probably did something right. Mugabe got the land back for the people. They fought the war, they won the war, and they took the land, or at least enough of it to where to satisfy most of the people in the country. South Africa never got the land. Elijah Muhammad, the old nation of Islam, if you look back on it, it's the closest thing we've had to a nation within a nation in the U.S. I mean, in terms of organization, government, economy, food, and all the rest of that. Now, we know there's a lot of other things. See, these all need to be touched up. A lot of other things that people like to bring up about Elijah Muhammad, but I always say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is a structure that we have not been able to repeat in America before or since. Ida B. Wells, she was one of the great anti-lynching crusaders, journalists. Before I had her name there, the kids all thought she was Michael Jackson. But I have pictures of, and I know a lot of you have seen the pictures of the lynchings and all of that, so we have all that just to let them understand what those people did for entertainments on the weekend during the day, during those times. John Okello of Zanzibar, the Omani Arabs were on the backs of these people for generations in their own homeland. They finally rose up and had a rebellion to get those Arabs off their back. John Okello was the leader of the rebellion. People complain in retrospect it was a bloody affair, but you know, sometimes people just don't believe when you ask them. Fela Kuti, the great Nigerian resistance musician. Fela with political albums ranging from bleating to international business to the Africans when they leave the plantations in Brazil. These are the Portuguese plantations. They form what they call quilombos. Those maroons go into the mountains. One quilombo is called Palmares, which is the most probably longest lasting and strongest of the quilombos. Zumbi was the founder. Nascimento, in more modern times, Brazil, he was really one of their Pan-Africanist writers, thinkers, artists, and the rest. Suffered a lot for just trying to open things like the Black Experimental Theater, because in Brazil they like to pretend that there's really no race issue. Sam Nujoma, who was the only one who was still alive when we actually did this painting, mistakenly, I thought he was gone. He's died several months back at a ripe old age, but he struggled. Booker T. Washington, institution builder. A lot of people talk about, oh, well, there was some accommodation between him and Du Bois and all, but I think if you read up on it, the book by a sister named Tyrene Wright, other ones talk about things Booker T was doing for black people that I don't think he got credit for. B.B. King, who's my daddy's #1 blues man, so him and Lucille made the wall, didn't have to ask no questions. Walter Rodney, one of Anna, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa is one of the classics you should read. Grounding with My Brothers is the time he spent in Jamaica. Taught not only in the Caribbean. Queen Elmina was a great Hausa queen from northern Nigeria, commanded a huge territory, warrior queen, cavalry rider there in Zaria, Zazu. Eduardo Manlani, I mentioned earlier, someone was talking about Samora Michel. This was the mentor He's really, you know, PhD out of, I think, Northwestern, all this kind of thing, but still he was able to break free of all of that, those traps, come back, fight for his people in Mozambique. He created Frelimo, and as I said, I like the children to know, since they see a stoplight every day, that the stoplight, the stop signal, as it's configured now, was invented by Garrett Morgan. Of course, we know he did the gas mask and some of the other things. So I always like the kids to know something about the creative side. The great Frantz Fanon, wretched of the earth, psychiatrist by training, political theorist, Pan-Africanist, revolutionary. Say on behalf of the folks from the Caribbean, you know, we see a lot of thinkers coming out of the Caribbean. You know, I mean, you fought where you could fight where you were, but when I think of the Frantz Fanons and the Césaires and Walter Rodney, I mean, we've really benefited from a lot of the brain power. Malawi, the theologian, he had to leave America and come back to Malawi, fight the British, because they had obviously not read the Bible that they gave to them. Sekou Touré, most Ghanaians know him as the person who brought in Kwame Nkrumah when he was deposed. I really have him there just for his overall resistance to the French in general. He didn't want to continue being part of this so-called French society. Mentioned him from Martinique. There was a movement called Negritude, which was a literary movement amongst French-speaking former French colonies, like in the U.S., I mean, in the Caribbean and in Africa. He was one of the founders of that. He was a poet, and also one of the intellectual fathers of Cheikh Anta Diop and a lot of the other ones who were in Paris in those days in the 30s and 40s. Discourse on Colonialism is another great book by him. Samori Touré, probably our most effective fighter against the French across West Africa, also related to Sekou Touré, one of the uncles. Kwame Touré, who was Stokely Carmichael in our times, born in Trinidad. We knew him from Howard University. He was a personification of Black Power when I was a kid. That was, and then he changed his name to Kwame Touré, Kwame after Nkrumah, Touré after the Tourés in Guinea. Sometimes you see O, sometimes you don't there in Guinea. I know y'all all looking for Mandela. She's right here. Great Winnie Mandela. Winnie Mandela taught all kind of hell. We didn't give her credit for it. African Ancestor Wall, we do. I mean, you talk about someone, and then at the end they tried to like push her off the scene, like she wasn't consequential. It's like, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. There was a Nelson, there was a Winnie. So everyone says, where's Nelson? I said, I got a lot of wall over there, so don't worry. But Winnie gonna get her day in the sun. And Dr. Frances Cress Wilson, how many of y'all know Frances Cress Wilson? She was disabusing you of this idea that you're gonna talk those people into doing the right thing. I'll leave it there. Also, you know, they had a debate about black intellectual inferiority on Tony Brown's journal back in the day. And they brought this guy Shockley, who was getting, a white guy from Stanford or somewhere, who was getting a lot of attention about his theories of black race and genetic inferiority. And he had to debate her, who's a psychiatrist by training. And I mean, this was one of the most lopsided debates you've ever seen. If you get a chance to look it up on YouTube, too. So